Hey, ladies and gents. Hope you guys are doing well. I just wanted to share with you a little bit about Cornell notes, sort of how they're structured, a little bit of the history, and why they can be useful for you. Here's a fair question. How do you eat an elephant? The answer is one bite at a time, right? I guess that's sort of gross, but yeah, that's a saying. But the idea is you take something big, and the way you make it work for you is you just break it down into smaller pieces. Okay, so uh, as sort of the history of it goes, I believe the idea was a Cornell law professor was having difficulty with students sort of managing the vast amount of information that they would have to pour over in all their reading. So to help make sense of all the notes they were trying to take, the professor organized it in a very particular way that made all the information a little more digestible. And I have sort of a way to think about this. I'm going to read off a series of numbers. I'll do it one time and I'll ask you to see if you can memorize these numbers. 0, 1, 7, 1, 9, 0, 3, 7, 1, 9, 0, 2, 0, 1. So let's take a moment to sort of ponder the universe, look outside, check what time it is, whatever the case may be. Now, can you read back those numbers to me? I've had people get close, but I've never had a student be able to read those numbers back in the correct sequence. So let me read these same numbers, but in a different sequence. 317, 007, 911, 90210. Now, second time around, is it necessarily as difficult to capture those numbers? Well, probably not. Well, it's because you can relate chunks of those numbers to some sort of external factor. And doing that makes it easier to digest that information and make sense of it. So the goal of Cornell Notes is to provide scaffolding. The same way you can make a large building by providing scaffolding or support, you can do that with sort of voluminous notes. The way I think of it with Cornell Notes is sort of like ornaments on a tree. You can have the main trunk of the tree, that's the thrust of the notes, that's the central idea. You can have branches on the tree, and the branches are like big ideas scattered throughout the notes. And then the ornaments are the individual little facts. If you tried to just memorize a bunch of facts without context, that can be really daunting. Okay, and sometimes people get overwhelmed if they have a huge quantity of facts they're trying to understand. But if you can organize your ideas in such a way where you sort of see how these facts relate to bigger ideas and how it all ties into central concepts, then it can all become much more manageable. So let's take a moment to look at sort of the structure of the notes. So you can set this up on just a regular piece of notebook paper. All you do is draw a vertical line about a third of the way from the left-hand margin. And then when you're done with the notes, you'll draw a horizontal line across the bottom. I've also got this electronic template available. You can put it in your Google Drive, have the template handy, and then you can just open up copies of the template whenever you want to take notes. What you do is just have some information at the top. And then in the notes, along the left-hand column, you can write down the big ideas as they occur, and then you can make a bulleted list of facts related to that on the right. In addition to that, you can insert images in the left-hand column, so you can have an image sort of go with what you're talking about in the notes. The left-hand column is also a good spot for questions. If you're going through something that's like, boy, this isn't really clicking, or you're reviewing your notes and you have a question, you can just jot the question down and then that stands out. And then what you can do is get in touch with me and say, hey, I was looking at this particular topic and I've got a question. Okay. Another beautiful thing about Cornell Notes is as you build it, you're actually creating a study guide. The big ideas are along the left-hand column, and then the facts are along the right-hand column. So what you can do is sort of cover up the right-hand column, or if you do it on a piece of paper, fold under the right-hand column, and you could say, okay, what do I remember about emergent properties? And you can sort of quiz yourself, okay? That's a metacognitive skill, right? You sort of are aware of what you understand and what you don't understand. So it's a really good way to organize your study. The last part of it is the summary. The idea of Cornell Notes is after you finish all this information, you go back and look at it and say, what was this all about? What were the big ideas? Because again, what that does is provide the scaffolding. So when you go to review, the best way to review is actually begin with the summary. The first thing you do is look at the summary and say, okay, this is what all this is about. These are the central concepts. And then you go back through and then review by big idea. So Cornell notes are an incredibly effective note-taking method because it just simply organizes your information in a very usable fashion. Now, I mention this because I put a lot of emphasis on um, sort of evidence-based strategies for educational practices, like what actually has impact on students' learning. So Robert Marzano did a meta-analysis. They looked at thousands of different studies in education, and they looked at certain practices and what practices had the biggest impact on student learning. So they developed this list of top 9 instructional strategies. And as it turns out, the most effective thing you can do is identifying similarities and differences. Now, on its face, it may be like, what? Comparing, contrasting? But in reality, to understand the relationship between two concepts, you have to sort of understand some of the intricacies of each concept. So that makes sense. But look at number 2, summarizing and note taking. Man, oh man. Take good notes and summarize them. It's one of the most effective things you can do to learn and master information. You notice homework isn't until number 4, so you're getting some extra practice. Notice is at number 5, non-linguistic representations. That's fancy education speak for pictures of meaning. So again, with your Cornell notes, you can take an image and insert that into the notes so you have sort of a visual link to connect back to. Okay, so 2 of the top 5 things you can do are included in good Cornell notes. Okay, now, all that being said, I don't care what you do. To be honest, take your notes, do whatever you want to do. Now, I do encourage you to take notes. Don't just like look at a lecture video or sit in a lecture in class and be like, yeah, makes sense. The act of kinetic motion, the act of writing, the act of typing actually helps people store information. So you need to engage with the information in some way, shape, or form, whether it's digitally by taking notes or writing things out in the notebook. So be an active learner, and it'll make this whole process a lot easier for you. So Cornell Notes will be available for you. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, hey, have a great evening.